So we don't want to have defenseless enemies here. We want to have the enemies firing back at us, right? And so what we'll do here is, I think we've created this enemy prefab. So we're going to be just using this one. And what we just need to do is have the enemy basically instantiate it and fire it. Now the key thing is that we don't want just the same one firing, and we have to sort of play a little bit with the frequency of the firing. And so that will be something that we'll have to look at a little bit more later on, but to increase sort of that rate, but at least we can start with something here. And so just to show you what I've got. And so I put the firing in there, and so there's one firing. What I find is that it seems to be a reasonable frequency. They can speed up a little bit because it's just random, and I'll show you how I've got that. But it seems to be a reasonable number. Now sometimes there's little breaks and stuff like that, but it seems to be reasonable. Of course, we could also decrease the speed on that firing or the speed of the bullets as well to make it a bit easier. So not only do we have a reduced frequency, but we have a reduced velocity on those shots as well. So let's go look. What we've got basically is, and I think we created this before, our shot movement, which was basically the same as before, and we just put a speed on that. So I think this shot here, we had a +5, and it was the same movement script. And then this one, I just simply set to -5. And obviously this shot speed might be something you want to influence. Okay, either speed it up or slow it down, depending on the level. So let's go check out our what our script is. Now what I've done is on all these enemies, and for some reason these aren't showing up as prefabs, so I'm not sure what I did here, but if you got them all as prefabs, it makes life easier because you just change it once, okay, in your prefab, and then that will go through there. I'll probably change that up after. But what I've got is my enemy shot script, and I think we had that on there, and like I said, I didn't quite like the name, but it's okay. So on that script, we had the trigger, okay, the on trigger enter. So when the player shot us, it destroyed the enemy here. Now what I've done is created a variety of variables here to hold a few things. And so I've got a game object, okay, which is going to be our shot because we need to instantiate our shot. I've got this fire frequency, which I have actually not touched yet. And I think that number, I put it in there because I was thinking about changing the rate. And so I put that in there for the moment, but I haven't touched it. I've got a next fire, okay, and I've got a fire rate min and a fire rate max. Okay, so that's sort of the numbers that we're dealing with there. Now at the start, because I don't want them always firing at the same time, I've created a next fire, and it will choose a value between the minimum and the maximum. Okay, now what you have to think about is that each of the enemies will be doing this on their own. Okay, so the script goes on each enemy, and each enemy will be developing a different range here. So that's why you're going to get, at some point you might get lots firing at once, and you might get none firing for a little bit, because it's all just sort of random here. Okay, obviously the difference between these, this rate minimum, and you'll see down here how that works, will influence the similarity or the frequency of them firing together. Okay, so what we've got here, basically this is important, the instantiate, okay, and we've seen this before. We're going to instantiate what? A shot, and where? Well, from the enemy, and so I just took its position. I don't think we have to worry about if it's a little bit lower or a little bit above, that's fine. And then with its rotation, okay? Now, this is the key thing here. So we're not clicking a button this time. We need to create this randomness. And so since we're in the update function, we've got time.time. And time.time will just be constantly getting larger and larger. And so if time is greater than the next fire, then it will shoot. Now, the next fire originally is this value here. And I think if we go back and look, I did between 2 and 20. You might want to change this up, like create just a separate one for the first fire so that this number here is a little bit less, because I think but yeah, they're all firing differently. So I think we're probably okay here now that I think about it. So anyways, that's the next fire. Now we don't want it always to be the same, so we have to reset the value of next fire. And the other thing is next fire has to be greater than time.time, or else it would never fire again. If we didn't add the time.time here, next fire would never be greater than time.time. Okay, and so we'd always end up with it basically not firing anymore. So what we're going to do is, again, that random range. So we're going to add on to the current time, add a little bit of time, and then it will fire when that happens. And because, like I said, this is different for all the enemies, it will fire at different rates. At lower levels, we'll probably have to have bigger numbers here, and then at as we get more advanced, we'll want to increase the frequency and actually therefore probably decrease this number. And I think that's where this fire frequency we might have to use. I might have to times this by a fire frequency and modify that. So if it's level 2, the fire frequency is higher. If it's level 3, it's whatever the number is there. So we'll have to look at that a little bit later. I put it in there, but I haven't really fully figured it out yet. Okay, and so if we go back into Unity, so if this save that up, like I said, my fire rate I put at 2 and 20 there. And so if I was feeling that that was too high, okay, now you see there's a bit of a delay at the start, and that's why I was thinking I might just sort of change that up. But if we started it again, okay, so there's still always that little bit of a delay. So, but you can see them start to fire and so on. Okay, and each one should fire, but they're just sort of based on random. So I don't know if you watch one, but I mean, for a starting level, that's not bad. If we played with these numbers, so if I decrease the maximum, probably to, let's just do 8 or something, we should see a increase in the firing rate here. Let's just see. We might have to play with a minimum too. I think there's definitely a more consistent firing here. Okay. And if we get really close, what's this? Let's go to 3 here, and let's put this as 1. Let's see what happens here. So again, it's just sort of playing around. Now it's not having as big of a difference as I suspected, so I might have to play around a little bit with those numbers. And it does seem to be a little bit higher. We might just have to play around with those numbers a little bit more. And of course, I wasn't thinking about that. I'm only changing 1 here, so let me change them all here. So I mean, that's why I'm not getting a difference there, so, or a noticeable difference in the frequency, probably from just 1. So again, if I had put these all as prefabs, I'd be much better off. Okay, so let's just see if this increases it here. Yeah, and now I'm getting a definite increase in the firing rate. Okay, so I mean, that sort of gives you a pretty good idea of what you can do for a creating a rate of fire, and obviously we can modify these values, and so that's what I was thinking about, multiplying it by a frequency, fire frequency, so that level 1, multiply it by 1. We need to reduce the number, so if we multiplied it by 0.75 or 0.5 or 0.1, we could really reduce the rate and therefore increase the firing rate. Okay, so we decrease the range there and therefore increase the rate, because what's being added on to the time.time for the next fire is decreased. Okay, So I think that's a pretty neat little way to get our enemies firing at us. I guess what we should do next is take damage on our player, and maybe we'll add an animation to that, sort of that we've got our death as well, and then reinstantiate a new player there. So we'll see what we can do in the next video.